Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. You know, I got to tell you, I get to have the most fun of anybody that I know that I'm allowed to have, because I get to talk to some of the most unique people and the wonderful people on the planet, and who are experiencing life in a big way and are really, for whatever reason, have taken a path of working with energy and positive motivation and just all kinds of things. Well, today, I have to tell you, we have a very, very special guest with us today. They talk about my most favorite people in the world who happen to be full of fur, and we would affectionately call them our fur babies. And she does healing with them. She does energy work with them. She does behavioral work with them, which is kind of an important idea, and also behavior work with you so that you can understand why. Well, as an example, why your beautiful cat suddenly is pissing in your shoes. I'm just saying. So in any event, Denise Mange is with us. And how are you today, young lady?
I'm excited to be here, and it's always so fun to get together with a group of people who loves animals, whether it's animals in the wild, their pets. They really help open and expand our heart. And when we have an open and expanded heart, that's where the positive talk comes in, right? Whether it's with others, we're more loving towards we're also more loving towards ourselves. So I'm so excited we get to talk about pets and positive talk.
I am too. Now, how did you go down this path? And tell us a little bit about your history.
I'm actually the least likely person to be talking about pets. I grew up in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and we had an apartment building. My dad wasn't crazy about pets. So growing up, I never had a traditional pet like a dog or a cat, but I still felt so connected to and loved animals. So I would, go downstairs and bring like roly-polies and caterpillars up, and they would be my little companions. So from a very early age, I learned that, no matter the shape, the size, we have such a connection with our animal companions on this planet, and they bring us so much joy. And so many of us have that empathic just knowing of what they're feeling, how they're doing. One of my favorite movies growing up was E.T. And so that relationship of E.T. and Elliot was a really kind of dead ringer for me. I was like, wow, that's how I feel with animals. I guess everybody feels like that about pets. So, I had no pet growing up. I went through life and followed a path on Madison Avenue, worked in advertising for over a decade. And towards the end of that career, anyone who's worked in advertising realizes it's like dog years, 10 years, right? You're just so burnt
Yep.
out. And so I figured, okay, I want to leave advertising. What should I pursue? And so one of the last accounts I worked on was Purina. And I just realized that I just love talking about, pets, the relationship with their pet parents, how it evolved. And our focus groups were just days and days on end of hearing pet stories. I was like, you know what? I've always loved pets. I'm going to open a doggy daycare, because in New York City, there's no shortage of people who need a doggy daycare.
Oh, yeah.
And since I grew up not really having a dog, I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, I know everything about dogs and dog training. I figured I should learn about pet behavior. So I signed up to do a dog training course, had to do practicum hours working with pets and their humans. And I just fell in love with that. I loved talking to humans, working with the pets, creating that collaboration. And I said, forget the brick and mortar of a doggy daycare. This is what I love. I want to work with pets and their humans. And that was the beginning of it all.
Did you find that in most cases when pets and humans get together that they kind of know who they each other is, and they when they bond, especially when they bond, that they have just such a wonderful connection to each other. Where does that come from?
It's so wonderful. Growing up in Brazil, there's this word saudades. And saudades means you miss someone or you miss something, but you love them and they're a piece of your heart. And so I always talk about the pet human relationship. That bond that we feel with them is because we have saudades, we miss our natural state. As humans, our natural state is to be open hearted, playful, joyful, living in the moment. But we go throughout our days and we so much distracts us and we get thrown off by socialization. Our pets remind us of that human essence of the heart, which is we love love. We love playfulness. We love bonds. We love being vulnerable with each other. So I think that's a big part of why we connect so deeply with our animal companions. They're one of the most intimate and honest relationships in our lives because they have no hidden agenda. They have nothing that they're trying to do. They're not judging us like, sometimes other human relationships might. So we go back to that ability to be the essence of who we truly are, which is open-hearted and positive.
It's amazing the physical effects of having a dog or a cat or an animal that you love. Your stress levels lower. Your your whole being tends to change when you have that, as well as being responsible for their happiness and stuff. I always have always said I loved it when I would come home and my dog always was wagging his tail and was really happy to see me. I can't say that about everybody in the house, sadly.
A lot of pet parents, that's the experience that we always think, right? That's the gold standard is you come home, you get welcomed, you feel that unconditional love. But I think what I even admire more about our animal companions is that's not the experience for a lot of pet parents. For a lot of pet parents, their experience with their dog might be a bit more challenging, a bit more triggering. It might take a bit more patience, a bit more work. They might have a skittish pet that they've rescued. So, what I find so amazing about our animal companions is in each chapter and season of our life, we get the pet that we need in that moment to help us expand and grow on our path of personal transformation. So maybe if I have a soul contract with one of my animal companions, because I do believe we have soul contracts with our pets, it may be to help me feel welcome and accepted and warm. But someone else's soul contract might be, you know what? With this pet, you're going to learn about your leadership style. And so your pet might be a bit more challenging. They might require you really to, kind of stand big in your energy, be stable in your energy, be consistent with boundaries, which can create a bit more of that relationship that requires work, growth together, collaboration. And then it can evolve into something different, which is those tail wags and those cuddles. But our relationships with pets are so multidimensional, just like our relationships with humans.
Oh, it's amazing. I have to tell you a quick story because tried to rescue a dog. I miss my dogs that I've had. I lost them, due to old age and cancer and stuff. And I said, well, you know what? I'm going to get another dog. So I went to the pound and I got a rescue and brought her home. She seemed like a nice little dog, but she had a dark side to her. It was really weird because I would take her out and she was on a leash, of course. And there's a little park by where I live. And like this one time, this little Asian lady, she couldn't have been, like 75 pounds and 5 feet tall. And she wanted to pet the dog. I didn't know the dog very well at this point,
Mhm.
but and the dog seemed to be wagging her tail and was nice and was ready. And then the lady started to bend down and to reach for, and the dog jumped up at her
Mhm.
and snapped at her and growled and barked. And it was like a total flip.
Mhm.
Was that because, and I assumed it was because of some of the things that she'd gone through
Mhm.
earlier in her life,
Mhm.
and so she wasn't able to put that aside. But have you ever had that happen? Is that
All the time. All the time. And so this is such a classic example of our animal companions speak human so well. They know how to read us, they know our emotions, they know how to respond to our emotions. As humans, we're beginning to learn how to speak dog, how to translate their behavior, their body language. And so this is why, when as we'll talk today, what I'll be proposing is that we are in a new vanguard of pet guardianship, where we are looking not only at traditional training, but combining it with energetic considerations of pet guardianship. And the reason why we're not just replacing traditional training with the energetic and psychic connection is that the traditional training is so important. And so, in those moments, it's important for pet parents to understand that not all tail wags are happy tail wags, right? If your dog's tail wag is loose and their body's loose and their mouth's kind of open, they're having a good time, that's a happy tail wag. If it's lower and harder, almost like a windshield wiper, that is, I'm having a lot of stress. I'm not comfortable with the situation. I'm nervous and I need help. And so in those moments as pet parents, we interpret any pet wag as being, a happy thing. Great. They're excited to say hello. Come on into our space and come reach down and say hello. So your puppy was giving you all the proper signs of, I'm not comfortable with this. Let's get out of this situation. Let's get out. And of course, when we don't intervene, then it escalates into give me space, the only way I know how to ask for it. So in these moments, traditional training, desensitization is always going to be really, really important, especially if we have a young puppy or a dog that we just, don't know very well, or is coming into a new environment from the shelter or from a breeder, wherever it's coming from. We need to do that traditional training and desensitization. And then also we need to understand energetically that we need to be comfortable setting limits, because pet parents, and especially dog parents, tend to be very social, right? We are pack animals ourselves. We love to talk with other people, bond with other pet parents. And on top of that, we tend to be incredibly empathic. And when we're empathic, we tend to already anticipate how other people are going to feel in any given situation. So I work with a lot of pet parents who, if somebody's on the street and they want to say hi to their pet, they say, I feel bad not allowing them. What are they going to think? They're going to think my dog's mean, or that I don't want them to say hello. Like, that really upsets me. So in these situations, we need to look at the traditional training. We need to look at the traditional desensitization and commands, but we have to look at the energy of the situation. We need to find in ourselves that comfort, working through the empathic tendencies of ours, working through our preconceptions and perceptions of how we're supposed to be managing other people's experiences, and set that boundary. Thank you for saying my pet is cute. I love that, but they're in training and we just need a little space. But thank you. Maybe in a couple weeks we're in training, but we'll catch you next time.
By the way, that's actually, I wish I had met you earlier when that little fellow was still around. And by the way, if you would like to comment on Denise, or talk about her, or give us a scenario, you can put it in the comments, and she can answer your question for you. I got a ton of them. The other one was same dog. And I was trying to potty train the dog. Now it was 2 years old. It appeared to have had puppies, but it was not, for whatever reason, was not happy going number 2 outside. So the day before I turned her back in, because I couldn't deal with that, I took her out every 2 hours. Every 2 hours, I took her out and we did a walk, and I said, you got to go. I know you do. And she didn't, and she didn't. And after the 5th or 6th time, I brought her inside because I had some work to do in my studio. And I walked back out into the living room, and in the same spot, there was a pile. And it was like, and she looked at me like, so? That's where I go. I'm sorry. That's just what I do. And I even put a dog mat down for her to use. And she took her paw and scraped it to the side and then went. So So I didn't. So I
Yeah.
thought the dog was like saying, "Look at you, look at me. I can do anything I want, and I'm gonna poop right here, regardless."
Ah, yeah, and it's so funny because especially when it comes to our pets having accidents or eliminating inappropriately in our house, we do take it personally because there's nothing that gets our blood boiling more than like we went on a million walks. Why on my grandma's rug, right? Like, come on.
Exactly.
And so again, here is we want to combine the traditional with the energetic. So from a traditional training standpoint, again, that word you guys are going to hear me say a lot is desensitization, right? The reason our animal companions might have trouble, going number one, number two, or both outside is they need to be comfortable enough and with the least amount of distractions that they're able to relax, their bladder or, their little relaxed enough for the bowel movement to happen. And odds are there's a lot going on and they're distracted. I like to use the analogy of, if we're going to a party and we're in a taxi cab, going to the apartment and, in the cab, you're like, oh, I have to go to the bathroom. I can't wait to get there. And then you get to the party, you open the door, you start saying hi to everyone. 20 minutes later, you're like, oh gosh, yeah, I had to go to the bathroom. Okay, let me go to the bathroom. But it was not top of mind at that moment because you were distracted. Same happens with our animal companions, whether they are distracted by what's going outside, the scents, the smells, the scenes, or they're a bit nervous outside. Maybe they're not very comfortable outside. That can be a deterrent for them actually being relaxed enough to do their business outside.
You just made first of all, should I give him a magazine or something? Is that what I should, it's like, here.
No, but we should give ourselves a magazine because what happens is, as pet parents, accidents is one of the most uncomfortable things, maybe second to, independence training and like, separation anxiety and barking on leash. But for us, what happens is, especially if we're taking our dog out every 2 hours, our energy starts getting very attached to a very specific outcome, which is eliminating outside. So whether I realize it or not, my energy has an intensity to it. I take them outside. I'm like, come on, go to the bathroom. I know you got to go to the bathroom. And even if I'm not saying it, it's in my energetic field. And our animal companions read and pick up on that energy really, really quickly. So it adds more stress to the situation.
Well, and you know what's interesting about that, because at night, I live in a 55 plus trailer park, but at night nobody's out, nobody's here. So I would let her go out without a leash.
Mm.
And one night, fairly early in, she saw another animal or she saw something that spooked her. And because she kept, for the next several nights and days, she
Mhm.
kept looking at that spot going, what's there?
Yeah,
So maybe
yeah.
she was so uncomfortable opening up in that way,
Mhm.
and opening up and going to the bathroom like a
Mhm.
normal dog would. She was scared of the environment. That
Mhm.
makes perfect sense. I wish I'd have met you earlier. She might still be here.
And then we have another layer to this, right? So
Uh-oh.
we have the traditional desensitization, making sure they're comfortable enough in their environment. So, kind of the physical aspect to it. We have our energy in the moment being so focused on, okay, go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom. And it creates that intensity, which doesn't help in the relaxation process. And then what I've kind of found working with pets and pet parents is when we're dealing with accidents, it's also giving a bigger kind of pattern going on in our lives. And odds are it has to do with, what are we kind of ignoring? What are kind of red flags in our lives that, we probably should see for what it is, but we're trying to, push under the rug or ignore, whether it's a relationship, a friendship, a career opportunity that's not quite matched, but we don't want to, face it head on or deal with it. A lot of times, improper elimination or accidents around the house kind of has us looking at where are we pissed off, but we're not facing it. What relationships are not appropriate? Where might we be, dumping inappropriately on our friends? Maybe we're
No
going.
pun intended, of course.
Sorry. Sorry.
I said no pun intended.
No pun intended. Exactly. We love the double entendre here. Um, but it's all about making sure that we are, if our animal companion, our dog, our cat, if they have a behavior, I talk about common sense spirituality and how our animal companions are experts at this. But when they're exhibiting a behavior, one of the lessons there is that it's not personal, but it's always about you, in terms that, they're not looking at you and trying to challenge you necessarily, but there is a lesson that you can learn from their behavior and kind of what's going on in the situation, whether it's energetic management on my part, or even seeing, metaphorically, what are they reflecting or mirroring back to me in other areas of my life that I can shift and focus on as well.
I can't imagine what it would be like to be a dog that ends up in a shelter. So in this particular dog's case, they were a stray for a period of time,
Mhm.
and then they end up in the shelter, and then these people would come in and, no, I don't want that dog, and another, no, I don't want that dog. And so she was shy and stuff, and so she was at the shelter, and and then she comes to your house,
Mhm.
and it's a completely different environment, and she
Mhm.
doesn't know you from Adam,
Mhm.
and so it takes a while for them to feel comfortable, I would imagine,
Mhm.
with the new situation with you, and then you let them go outside, and it scares them where they are,
Mhm.
because they don't know the area, and they didn't grow up there. I can
Mhm.
imagine that for a dog, that would be a really, really stressful time. How do you help them get over that, would
Mhm.
be my next question.
Mhm. And so there's a few different ways that we can help, because you're spot on, right? I mean, their world has changed, their relationships have changed. Maybe they're not comfortable with humans. Maybe they haven't had previous relationship with humans, or maybe it hasn't been the best, relationship with humans. So there is a lot at play. And a lot of times it's unknown. We really don't know exactly what's going on with our animal companions.
They didn't know about what had happened to this dog. They said, well, I don't know.
Yeah. So, a few things we want to do. We want to keep in mind that, there's a rule of thumb in rescue, that any rescue pet that comes into your home, it's the 333 rule, right? So it takes typically, 3 weeks for them to just decompress. And for some dogs, that means that they're just able to take a deep breath and finally look you in the eye for a second, right? Decompression can take a really long time, and that's they're just kind of getting comfortable and getting their bearings. Then it, probably around the three, so that's 3 weeks with the decompression. Probably around the 3 month mark, then they're more comfortable with you and they know the environment, right? So we're kind of walking that journey between the first 3 weeks and then the first 3 months. And so we want to do a few things. We want to provide loving boundaries, because just like human children, our animal companions feel safest when they know what to expect, when there's some stability. So that can be in terms of everything from, if they're crate trained in the shelter, instilling and keeping the crate training, keeping those loving boundaries, giving them a safe space. It entails, if a pet is open to it, teaching them commands, working on very simple commands, always with positive reinforcement, right? Where we are rewarding behaviors that we like and shaping, better ones, to replace choices of behaviors we don't love. And so that way, we're never dominating. We're never imposing ourselves. We're never punishing them. And we can keep that kind of mellow, sweet, collaborative energy that puppies and rescues tend to really benefit from. So we want to make sure that we're doing the traditional training to create those loving boundaries, give them a sense of stability, a sense of predictability, and kind of building and opening the trust and lines of communication. And then energetically, one of the big things that come through in a lot of readings with pet parents who have rescued dogs, a lot of times they say, "What happened to my dog? What happened before they came to me?" And in so many readings, I would say definitely the majority, our animal companions say, "I don't want to focus on that. I want to focus on the future from here on out. This is my new chapter." So never mind what happened before. I don't want to go into it. I want to focus on today and tomorrow. And so in order to accomplish that, one of the easiest tips that they ask for is, we're on a walk. with our pets. And what happens as pet parents? We run into each other. We say, "Oh my God, your dog's cute. No, your dog's cute. Oh my gosh, is your dog a rescue?" We go into that. And a lot of time as pet parents of rescue dogs, we say, "Yeah, my dog's a rescue. I picked them up in, rural California. They were at a shelter for 4 months. Nobody was picking them. They think they were in a fight." Like, we really go into that story. And so many times the animal companions say, instead of saying I'm a rescue, because then it begs like all that heaviness of the past, say, "Oh yeah, no, he's our new pup. He came to us, a week ago. Doesn't he look like me? He took after me, right?" So it's all about like shifting the energy to help them decompress. So we want to give them the traditional training and boundaries to help them decompress, but then also shift the energy away from their past, keep harking back and going back to it, which makes sense because, as humans, when we're working through our journey and path of personal development, and we're looking to move beyond different stories and narratives and relationships, it doesn't benefit us to keep going back to that story either.
It's not good so it's not good for them. Do they know what we're saying when we're saying it? And whether I don't know that they know necessarily English, but they do know how it's being energetically being presented. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So, scientists have done a lot of tests, and they say that dogs have the ability to comprehend language to the level of like a 2-year-old human child. So they do understand a lot of words, and they can kind of learn and amass a big amount of vocabulary. And that's just through association and repetition and learning, just like our human children. But I would say it goes way beyond that. I mean, they oftentimes know us better than we know ourselves. And a lot of that is because they can sense our energy. So, this is so important because in order to survive in nature, animals need to read the energy. They need to see if an animal or another dog is approaching them aggressively or if they're sick. They really need to understand what's going on, and they have to read situations very quickly. So they're experts at reading energy. And this is so important for us as pet parents because when we're working with our pets, one of the biggest gifts that they give us is understanding energetic coherence. Because if what's coming out of my mouth does not match my body language and my energy, they're always going to go with my energy versus my words because energy never lies. So if I'm outside with my dog and they're barking on leash and I'm like, it's okay, little one, we're all right. My words might be saying something, but my energy and body language and tone of voice is giving off a very different vibe. So when we're working with our pets, we have to be cognizant of that. So it's not only making sure that I'm like taking a deep breath, relaxing my shoulders, letting them know all is well, little one. We are okay. We're okay. All is well. That's going to be a very different energy than the first scenario. So that's how our pets really understand not only our words, but the nuance in our energy as well.
And then they act on it, don't they?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a two-way street. We start learning and picking up not only on their body language, on their different kind of barks, but we also start sensing and picking up on their energy as well. I mean, how many pet parents do I work with who they just know when something's off with their pet, right? They know, and sometimes they can't even explain it. I always say pet parents are way more intuitive than they give themselves credit for. You're really tapped in with your pet's energy, whether it's a dog, a cat, a bird, a lizard, a caterpillar, whatever it may be. We have that empathic connection.
Caterpillar, really? And not, or a lizard, or a snake. There are people that I know that have snakes for pets. It's like, have you lost your mind? Why would you do that? And I don't know.
Yeah.
But so when I was growing up, I grew up in a Lutheran family, and I was told from the time I was very, very young that animals do not have a soul. And yet, when I talk, as I've grown up and grown older, and we talk about energy and energetic understanding, and that we all as living beings emit energy in all kinds of forms, that doesn't make sense to me anymore, that they are just a lump of clay that is breathing, that there is more to them. Has that been your experience?
Absolutely. I mean, I think not only when it comes to pet guardianship, but our relationships in general with this planet. I mean, so many years ago, people would have said, oh, the earth doesn't feel anything. And then we're like, no, plants are alive, right? Look how we treated children, up until, a few decades ago. And now we're bringing them into more mindful conversations. We're seeing how, raising our children mindfully helps us grow as the parent as well. So we're kind of developing these deeper, more multidimensional relationships with our children. Same with our animal companions. There's no pet parent who looks at our little pets and says, oh my gosh, there's nothing behind, behind the eyes. We sense them, we feel them, we know them. And I mean, I can't even affirm as much as I'd like to how deep their soul is and how beautiful their souls are. And so, times change, people's point of views change, and especially, big, organizations and institutions, their point of view changes. When I worked at Purina in advertising, it was really interesting because one of my responsibilities was to bring the same notion of pet parenting that we had in the United States, where pets are our fur babies, to kind of translate that to Latin America, because the trends were a bit more behind. They still viewed, pets as, yeah, they stay outside in the yard, they get the scraps, there wasn't that kind of one-on-one relationship. Since, I was working with Purina, that was probably 2009, I would say. Today, I go to Sao Paulo and there are doggy daycares. There's doggy stores with all the, little dresses. And, you can't walk down the street without seeing a dog sitting at a restaurant with a pet parent. Our relationships evolve, our outlook on the depth of those relationships evolve. And I think even, I think it was a Brazilian Pope at the Vatican who said animals have souls. So even that narrative changed officially.
A couple things. When my dog Crockett had to be put down, and while they were administering the shot, and his eyes were still open, I could, tell me if you've experienced this, I could see the light leave his eyes. And at the moment that he passed, I could see that he was no longer there. And is that part of when the soul leaves? Is that something that you can attribute that to?
The way that the animal companions have explained to me the transition process, right, the saying goodbye, the departing from their physical body, is really interesting. The way they explain that moment is often one that they simply step out of their bodies. As humans, we are very attached to our physical vessels. We're worried about how we look. Are we overweight? Are we underweight? We're worried, oh my gosh, I have a pain in my elbow. Am I going to wake up with this pain in my elbow? Or I had a migraine last night. Am I going to wake up with that migraine? We're very attached to our body, how it looks and how we feel in it. Our animal companions, from what I've heard from in readings, they view their body as literally just a vessel. So when it's time to say goodbye to that body, it's almost like, with the emotional attachment that we would take our coat off after a long day, outdoors. It's just a boop, and it's off. And so oftentimes what they show is when they slip out, they sidestep their little body, then they're literally quite next to you and attached with you and just kind of looking up at you and watching you watch their body. So their souls do have that moment where, they detach from the physical, but more often than not, what is relayed to me is that then now they're just, like Casper the Friendly Ghost, their little energetic essence, ethereal, still palpable, is with you, and they accompany you, as if they had a little body.
And we're going to talk more about that in just a couple of moments, because I think it's really, really important. And there are several aspects of it that my friend Martha Norwalk would say And we'll talk about that. But I wanted to bring this up real quick because if you had my background, you might very well be a vegetarian because I was a chicken salesman for a vertically integrated chicken company for a
Mhm.
long time, and so they took the chicken quite literally from the egg to the slaughterhouse,
Mhm.
and watching the chickens go through that process was was not good. And the other one was if you go to a cow slaughtering plant, the way that that process works is the cows are led up a ramp one at a time,
Mhm.
and then there's the person who, by the way, I understand this job has a lot of turnover and is very, very stressful. But his job is to
Mhm.
um, basically put a bullet into their brain, and that will kill them. But
Mhm.
I was watching the eye of one of the cows as they were being led up the ramp, and was like third, and then was second,
Mhm.
and the look of sheer
Mhm.
terror
Mhm.
in that animal's eyes was like, how can we, just a sheer terror of it. So that cow knew what was about to happen to it. I'm convinced of that.
Mhm. That is, part of being human that I will say is one of the toughest part for me as an animal lover, pet groupie. That is the toughest part, and it's funny because I became a vegetarian in second grade because in Brazil, which is all about steak and meat, and I told my mom, I was like, I feel sorry for the animals. I don't think it's right to eat them, and my mom thought it was a phase, so she's like, whatever. But I have not had meat. Like I don't even know what a hamburger tastes like. But in those moments, this is the difficult part, right? Because we can draw that parallel to our animal companions in really difficult situations that are emotionally charged, especially for us humans watching it and being a part of it. And we can also look at other situations in our life with other humans where there have been tragedies or devastation. We say, how can we allow this to happen? My best way to kind of explain that is, it is about soul contracts and helping create awareness for the majority of us. Like, when, to your point, when you saw that, you were never the same, right? That's something that stayed with you.
I can still see
Yeah.
that those eyes
Yeah.
looking at me with the sheer terror
Yeah,
of
and I think the thing that's most important for pet parents and animal lovers to understand about this situation, and this was a lesson I learned the hard way, is that in these moments, we all want to see change, right? I don't think any of us want to see suffering, whether we're vegetarians or not. I think everybody wants humane existence because we're empathetic beings, right? And so the question becomes, how do we create change? And the beauty of each of us being wired so differently and coming from different walks of life is we each can play a piece in this puzzle. I got involved in dog rescue, and it really took me to a very depleted place emotionally, because it was just so difficult, and it would stay with me, and it would affect my health, and it would affect my ability to kind of perform and do what I need to do in my daily life. So what I realized with that is within that rescue circle, there were amazing people. There were people who it's not that it didn't bother them. They could kind of jump into action and be like, all right, I'm going to the shelter. I'm going to pick 5 dogs out of the 10. And I go, but how could you not bring them all home? And, this woman was super practical. She's like, I know I can only say 5. 5 is better than 0. Let's do this. I could never be the one going to the shelter and selecting which 5. But what I was really good at was marketing. So I could help build the brand that helped with the rescue, that, brought in donations and fundraising. And that's an aspect where I could contribute to rescue, but in a way that worked for me. So with this scenario of, whether it's humane treatment of animals, of all kinds, my advice would be find out what your role is in the process where you can best contribute without depleting and kind of breaking yourself down in the process, and contribute that way and partner with other people who are able to take the lead in the different aspects of the rescue or humane treatment or change.
You know, I had the opportunity to interview a rescue person,
Mhm.
and she was like in the Florida Keys,
Mm.
and she was known amongst the rescue facilities because what she wanted to do is to take old dogs
Mhm.
that had less than a year to live or maybe a little, and to give them a home and the love and take care of them through their end time. So every time she would walk into the other thing that she did was when they identified that a dog had to be put down,
Mhm.
she would go out of her way to do what she called my doggy's last day party.
Oh, wow.
And she would take that dog and she would feed it whatever it wanted, and if it was like like a hamburger
Mhm.
and whatever, and then help that dog through the process
Mhm.
as the injections were happening and that kind of stuff. She was an absolute angel,
Yeah.
and there are people that, God bless them, that can do that. I was interviewing a gal yesterday that at one time in her career was a childhood palliative care giver, and that was kids with cancer
Mhm.
that were going to die as children. And I'm so blessed that there are good people out there that are doing such incredible work, and with empathy and with kindness to
Mhm.
take care of people. It's just so if you are interested in that, seek it out at your local rescue, and to
Yeah.
see how you can be helpful to them because they need so much help these days, I
And
think.
even beyond that, I will say again, having been, an executive director for a pet rescue organization, because not everybody has the ability, to your point, to go to the shelter or actually, work with the pets for, a myriad of reasons. But following these accounts on social media, engaging with their posts and commenting, signing up for the newsletters, even things like that have a bigger impact than you even realize. Because then, as an organization, I can go to a sponsor like Tito's Vodka, who sponsored a lot of our rescue flights for dogs, and say, listen, we have high engagement. We have 30,000 followers with a 28% engagement. Our followers are interested. You'll get eyeballs. We'll post thank yous for you, and then we get the donations, right? Or if we're applying for a grant to continue to do our rescue, having engagement, having engaged donors, having engaged followers on social media in this day and age actually carries a lot of weight. So there's really simple things you can do that are incredibly meaningful, that hopefully fit within what you're comfortable with and how you want to contribute to rescue.
And by the way, we're talking with Denise Mange, and I want to make sure that everybody knows that you can go to her website, which is Pet Prana.
That's right.
Did I say that right?
You did.
Amazing. That's just simply amazing. Petprama.com, and you can find out all about the work that she does. She does pet readings, both pets that are still here and those that have passed on.
Mhm.
And as a matter of fact, if you want to give us a call, we've only got about 20 minutes or 15 minutes left. If you want to ask a question about a pet that is either here or not here, we can see what we can do. But Denise, I wanted to ask you just just real quick, is that my favorite dog in the world, his name was Crockett. He
Mm.
was an Australian Shepherd Labrador mix, and he was one of those dogs that would that you could tell if he had an accident,
Mm.
the world was coming to an end for
Mm.
him. He was so clear about the fact that he needed to go outside and whatever, and he just loved us to death, and he was actually I felt like he was my dog,
Mm.
and he's a beautiful animal, and I had to put him down because he had cancer. Probably due to the food that we were feeding him, but that's a story for another time. But do you have any thoughts around Crockett? I mean, he's been gone now Oh, 20 years
Mhm.
or so. But I firmly, I'm pretty sure that he's waiting for me. He may have been here once or twice, but he's waiting for me to come back.
Mhm.
Any ideas?
I love that. And Crockett, it's Crocket. Is that
Yeah,
right? Like
just
Davy? Like,
just like Davey. As a matter of fact, we when we got him, his brother's name, decided they could only keep one because
mm,
he was like 80 pounds, but so they only kept one. His brother's name was Daniel Boone, so his
oh,
name was really Davy Crockett.
oh, that's amazing. I love that. So, one thing that I'm really passionate about that I kind of learned through my journey working with, pets and pet parents is pet numerology, right? Because when I always pull the numerology of the human's name, the pet's name before I do any reading or any dog training session with the pets, because numerology really helps us understand the motivations, the tendencies, the roles we play in each other's lives, and how we complement each other. And so the interesting thing about Crockett, when I pull the numerology of Crockett's name, is he's got 11 within his name twice. And 11 over 2 in numerology is what we call a master vibration number. And that means that it's just a bit more highly vibrational than the average number of 1 through 9. And in particular, what I found in doing, hundreds or thousands of readings at this point is that when there is that 11 over 2 energy in the names of our pets, that these are pets who have been with us before in past lifetimes and experiences. So Crockett has the double 11. So Crockett is your boy in this lifetime. He's been with you in past lifetimes and will be again. Um, the other thing that's really beautiful is he has a lot of 3 energy within his name. And 3 is the creative expressive. It's all about joyful living. It's about being exuberant, but it's also about activation in their humans. So you might look back to your relationship with Crockett and be like, you know what? He inspired me to be more joyful. He inspired me to be more creative. He might have been part of your life when you were starting a new project, a new endeavor that really lights you up. 3 is a really powerful number to have within your pet's name. Um, and then because I'm not very good at math, I just need a second here to do some calculations. 2 plus 9 would be 31, plus 7, 38. Wow. So even his overall vibration of his name is 11 over 2. So he really is an old soul, very energetically connected, very attuned to what's going on, on this side of the veil, the other side of the veil. And he's been with you just time and time again. He is your spirit dog.
he, he was so smart and so funny
Mm.
that one time my parents, for their 50th wedding anniversary, instead of having a big party, they said, well, we're going to take everybody to Hawaii. So I could take everybody except Crockett. So we put him into a kennel for 2 weeks as we went away. And then when we came back and we went and got him, he would not look at me. He was so angry with me. He would, I tried to get him. He was like, you son of a, how could you do that? How could you leave me here for 2 weeks?
That is so funny, and we see this with our dogs, right? Our dogs, they get, their feelings get hurt. What's really interesting is understanding the motivation for it, right? Because in feeling into the energy of Crockett, his "How could you leave me" was rooted in, "I want to be by your side all the time. I'm your right hand man here. How could you leave me?" Whereas the reason I got into pet numerology in the first place was because of a series of dogs named Leo. There was a month when I was working with pets in New York City where, I kept getting similar requests from pet parents. And it happened to be, that month, it was like 4 or 5 pet parents reaching out to me. Their dogs had separation anxiety, and the dog's name was Leo. And I'm like, that's so weird. What's up with this name, Leo? And I remember I was between sessions in New York City and it was raining. So I dodged into like this spiritual bookstore because it looked so cozy and nice. And out of the blue, I've never seen this woman in there. I never saw her since. Raven black hair, tall, white skin, walks up to me in all black and says, "You need this book." And it was a book on numerology. So I'm like, that's really interesting. So, I looked at the book, leafed through it, and I pulled the calculation for the name Leo, because I was so curious. And what I found is that the name Leo vibrates at a 5. And 5 in numerology is the freedom loving adventure. So, what I realized is Leos, when they have separation anxiety, often it's because they have fear of missing out. They want to go on the adventures with you, they want to be out and about, they don't want to miss out on the fun. Whereas other pets who, have separation anxiety, it might be more about the codependency, the missing you. So this is why I find pet numerology so interesting, because we can, better understand the root motivation, which helps us have a more effective training plan.
And I want to just point, and that's a beautiful story, and thank you for sharing it. I just want to point out to everybody, because the same thing happened to me.
Mm.
And now there wasn't a black or a tall lady with black hair, but I had a good friend who said, "I want you to go to a metaphysical bookstore and buy the first book that speaks to you."
Hmm.
And that's what I said. What, I'm not sure exactly what that means,
Yeah.
but I'll go. And I went, and I've always been, for some reason, interested in past lives, life between lives, life after death, all that kind of stuff. Not in a morbid way, just in a curiosity way.
Mhm.
And so the book that that spoke to me,
Mm.
and I bought it, was called Journey of Souls, and it
Mm.
was by a Dr. Michael Newton, who has since passed. I did have the opportunity to interview him at one point, and it was about past lives. It was about life between lives, what happens when we go home, which is what I call heaven, and I call that home, because we all get to go there.
Mm.
That's where we all come from, and that's where we're all going, and that's where we all go back. And which brings up the next, really. So, I guess to finish that thought, because I'm really excited to talk to you, by the way. So I'm a little scattered, but to finish that thought, if you ever have the opportunity to go to a metaphysical bookstore, if there's one in your neighborhood, or if you go to a major store and go to their spirituality section, there's going to be a book that's going to speak to you. And that book is going to help you identify who you really are, and to help you grow into what you were destined to be from the soul contract that you created for yourself before you actually even got here. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. I think, one thing that the animal companions have taught me, and even animals in the wild, is that there's messages everywhere. What we're doing is really just creating a lexicon with the universe, right? So if we are observant, if we pay attention, if we learn to, interpret the body language of the universe, we can learn so much. And they do everything from, dropping us messages at a bookstore, where something just jumps out at us and it's because it was meant to be in our awareness at that moment. I'm a huge fan of understanding and playing with animal symbolism. What animals do you see out in your day? Is it a squirrel? Is it a raven? Is it a pigeon? What's the spiritual significance for you of that animal companion? Just like our Native American, communities were so wonderful at interpreting the different magic and symbolism and power of animals, we can do the same. Or even a simple Google search. That's a great way to kind of drop information in your lap, or numerology. So it's all about figuring out how you want the universe to give you those messages. And it helps open our intuition. And as we work with our pets and we open our intuition with them, now our intuition is more open and receptive, and we start getting more signs and clues from the universe. So I feel like our animal companions are always such a powerful starting point to expand our horizons and open up to our intuition more deeply.
And here's a bit of a controversial question that I have to ask you, because I believe it to be true. If you have a dog that you particularly loved, like in my case, Crockett, I really believe that if I get another dog, there's a very high likelihood that it's going to have his spirit, and it's going to be who he is. Do dogs do that? Do they come back in another animal form, or another used car, and or whatever, and come back into our lives?
That's such a great question. It's probably a really popular question that I get during the readings, especially for pet parents who've had to say goodbye, to the physical embodiment of one of their pets. I've gotten answers across the board, because it's not a one size fits all. Some pets are like, "Yep, I'm hopping right into the next body that's available when it hits you at the right time, and you'll know it's me because I'm going to lick you or do have an idiosyncrasy the same way that I did in my past life, so you're going to recognize me like that." I have other animal companions who say, "I know our love is so strong that when I transition, I'm going to stay on the other side of the veil because I become an energetic beacon for you. Now you're really going to open up to your animal communication, to your channeling, to your mediumship because of your heartfelt desire to connect with me. It's going to be the motivation you need to kind of take that step." I have animal companions who talk about being extremely omnipresent. And so they'll always be by your side, but then they'll pop up almost like, the mythology of like Zeus or Loki, I'll pop up in a bee or I'll pop up in a flower, but you're going to recognize me. And that's going to be a means for you to be able to open up to seeing the true essence of vibration of different things in your life. It's going to help attune you a little bit. So I've gotten answers across the spectrum, and I would say it depends case by case with what your soul contract is with that animal companion.
So maybe you can help me, or I need medication. But because occasionally I'll be in my bed or I'll be hanging around here, and Crockett had floppy ears. And they weren't really long, but they were floppy. So when he shook his head, they would go bump, 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 back and forth. I hear that from time to time, and I can't figure out what it is. Is that him?
That is, and that's one of the most common ways that our animal companions remind us that they're still with us. It's those things that are clairaudience, whether it is the floppy ears, whether it's the jingle of the collar. I've also heard a lot of pet parents talk about how, like, that moment where they're waking up between being awake and asleep, and they feel the pet that used to sleep on their, right hand side, they feel that pressure. And then they look down and they're not there, but they could swear they felt them. Those are all beautiful examples of our animal companions. They do remain with us. They do remain, their presence, their essence, their energy, whether they are embodied physically or not, we can still feel them. And that's the lesson they teach us, is that the love is enduring, the memories are enduring, and it's in a very practical way. It's very real.
And it stays with us forever until we get to meet them again. I'm firmly convinced that Crockett is there with my dad, because my dad was also a dog lover and they knew each other quite well. And so he's there and they're both waiting for me. And not like he said in Gladiator, not yet, not yet, but eventually. We've been talking with Denise Mange, and if you want to get a hold of her, how do they do it again?
They can always follow me on @PetPrana or go to my website, petprana.com.
And you are special. Will you come now? I know I'm supposed to talk with publicists and people like that, because you've been on some pretty big radio and TV shows and stuff talking about what you do. So, but will you come back?
Oh my goodness, absolutely. I love any opportunity to talk about pets, and this is so much fun, and we get to dig into so many different aspects of pet guardianship, and there's so much more to talk about. So of course I'll be here.
We just have scratched the very top of the one question for next time. We can't answer it today, but for next time, do spiders have a soul? I don't. So we'll talk about that next time. Because anyway, I don't want to. Yeah. So Denise, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me and sharing all your stories. It's really wonderful to have these conversations about our furry friends.
Well, and we haven't talked about my friend Wesley yet, and that we'll save that for next time. Have a great day, everybody. And Denise Mange, thank you very much. Go to Pet Prana, that is PRANA.com. Find out all about her. Work with her. She does readings. She can teach you how to keep your cat from pissing in your shoes because they're angry with you or something along those lines. So again, thank you, Denise.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin at kmmedia.pro.